What's up, config? How you doing? My name is Janen, and I'm a product lead for Slides and FigJam.
And hey, I'm Lawrence, and I'm a TPM on the product team at Figma. And we're so excited to be here today to share the story of how we built a tool we call PMOS for our team. So the seed for this initiative was planted a few months ago by Ezra, a PM on our monetization team. He was exploring the limits of the AI tools that we had access to at the time. And as a sort of passion project, he wrote this very compelling exploration into a day in the life of a fully AI-enabled PM, which I thought was incredibly aspirational when I first saw it. That's because, for starters, the landscape of a PM is incredibly messy. A major pain point that we often deal with is juggling context across a bunch of different tools. You have questions and feedback coming in on Slack. You have write-ups in your docs. You're doing brainstorms and bug bashes in FigJam. There's your designs, and you're doing design crits in Figma, not to mention all of the task trackers and the spreadsheets that you've got to keep updated. And so as a result, you're constantly looking across 5 or 6 different tools at all these different notifications. And it's such a headache for anyone who's just trying to get context and caught up. And although we understood theoretically that AI was going to help us with this, in practice, the tools weren't really talking to each other, and Ezra pointed out that it was actually feeling more complex than not. Another way to look at the problem is where PM's time actually goes day to day. And so if you're a PM, or if you work with one, you might see that this is what their calendar looks like. And since so much of our work happens in Slack or async, it's very common for people at Figma, on the PM specifically, to start their day with a focus block where all they do is catch up on Slack notifications or look at all these different tools. And if you're on a global team like us, it's also very common to wake up and already feel like you're behind. Then during the workday, you have a whole bunch of meetings. You need some time to prep for or to debrief from these meetings. And you don't really have that much time to do focused work. A lot of times that gets pushed towards the end of the day, or in the evening, or you just don't even get to it at all. And that's sort of the nature of glue work that just eats up your time. But what if it didn't have to? What if AI took care of all of that busy work for us? If PMs were freed from the glue work, their time could instead go towards meaningful strategy and craft work that PMs were uniquely equipped to do. And with AI helping us still run effective meetings, update documentation, and send updates to the right channels, then PMs just fully focus on higher leverage opportunities. So Ezra's proposal was super inspiring, but proposals alone don't change anything either. You need someone to do the work. Or in some cases, you need your manager to tell you to do the work. And so that's where Yuki, our chief product officer, came in. He saw the momentum around this write-up, and he called on 3 volunteers, Ezra, Janen, and myself, who were showing the most interest in the problem. And he asked us to work together to bring this vision to life. And no challenge is complete without a time limit, and so he gave us 1 month to build the thing and roll it out to the entire team, to which we said challenge accepted. But before we run away and get ahead of ourselves, we didn't want to rush and end up building the wrong thing. I really love this meme about the duality of working with AI, because if you do it wrong, you feel like you have to use AI at work. But if you get it right, you feel like you get to use AI at work, and it's actually adding value. And so it was very important to us to make sure that we landed on the good side and built for the happy path. And that's why even though all of our customers are internal, we still started out with a few principles. And these were inspired by the product teams who are working on the launches that you saw earlier today, but applied for ourselves. So first off, we wanted to start off with a very simple use case. It's tempting when you're starting with this really grand vision or like a North Star document to try to design the whole system at once, but we thought that would be biting off more than we could chew. So we tried to focus on a single use case and let the complexity grow from there. Second, we wanted to take it one step further than building with users in mind. We wanted to actually build with our users, and for us, that means our team. And that meant frequently checking in with, working with the PMs at Figma, and making sure that what we built was feeling really useful to them. And finally, the way to make something worth using every day is first to try using it every day yourself. And so this was a core requirement as we got going, that we were trying to find product market fit for ourselves with our personal workflows before considering the rest of the teams. And that way we were confident that eventually we could brand this the PMOS, and that we would feel like we had built it for us by us. And so putting that together, we decided to narrow down to that single use case to start from. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of PMs are starting their day reading Slack, reading a bunch of notifications, opening a bunch of different tools, and we wondered if we could turn that very tedious and fragmented ritual into something that was as simple as reading an article in a newspaper. And the way that would actually work is with a simple interaction where you can ask an AI, "What's up?" And it would tell you everything that you needed to know, what was new about your work streams, and nothing unnecessary besides that. But as it turns out, making that work exactly the way we wanted it to is a lot easier said than done. And Janen's going to tell you about that journey.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yes, so this felt simple enough. And so we decided the best way to learn if we could do it was just to try to build it straight away. And we started the way that most people do these days. We wrote a simple prompt to see if AI could just one-shot a perfect what's up. So we wrote search Slack, Asana, and FigJam, and summarized the most important updates in the last 24 hours. Make no mistakes. We put that simple prompt in a skills file so we could run it on demand, and we took a look at the output. But unfortunately, it wasn't very good, not very surprisingly. Even though the agent had connections to all of these different services, its ability to understand what matters to me was understandably quite poor. And so then I tweaked it. I specified the channels that mattered the most. I included more context about who I work with, like my manager, my teammates. And this instantly improved what was included in the update. However, it was still really verbose. It didn't include sources, so I couldn't click through to learn more. And in general, it just didn't feel great to use. And so then we added more instructions. Here I said, use a maximum of 5 bullets, always include sources, prioritize the items that seem like they're action items for me. And essentially, we felt really good about where this headed, but we knew it wouldn't really abstract really well to other skills. And we realized that there were 3 fundamental building blocks to making any skill for this type of project really valuable. Those are context, profile, and experience. Context is ensuring that the agent not only can access different important services and artifacts, but also that it knows what matters the most. Profile ensures that the agent understands who you work with, what matters to you, your priorities. And the experience is about making the output readable, useful, even beautiful. And so we took those building blocks and we abstracted them into their own files so that any prompt or skill could access them. So now, for example, if I ask it to search Asana, it does a great job because it knows exactly what projects I belong to and what my priorities are. It also understands phrases like my organization because it knows what part of the org I belong to. Most importantly, we realized that almost all of our ideas to streamline or automate work would benefit from these building blocks. So all of our other ideas for skills would become a lot easier. And it was at that point that we decided to put a home for all these skills and these building blocks into GitHub. And that's when we felt like we arrived at an early version of PMOS. So after a while of riffing on it as a small working group, we wanted to roll it out to more people. And we had a realization that the best way to do that would be to have some default apps or starter skills. And so we thought that there were 3 really great use cases to start. The first was, of course, what's up, which we've already talked about. So this helps you make sense of all the services you need to stay glued to as a PM. It finds all of the signal in the noise. The second, this one's one of my favorites, which is to write your weekly update. So if you say, write my weekly update, it'll actually not just give you information, but it'll actually write your update based on your GitHub contributions, what you're doing on Slack, what you've done in Asana. It will even write it in your voice, and it will include what shipped, what's coming next, what's top of mind. And then there's one click to publish it. And then the third one was a spec reviewer. So at Figma, we have a very specific process and template for writing specs. This includes sections like problem, solution, metrics, etc. And with the spec reviewer, it'll give you a report card on how well completed those sections are. Anything that's yellow or red, it will actually coach you and help elevate the standard of your document. One of the cool things about this, though, about this journey, is that even without specific custom skills, we realized that PMOS could use these building blocks to just answer any question that was useful. So in this case, if I ask who worked on the FigJam MCP, it'll actually take a look at GitHub and our org chart and pinpoint exactly who contributed. OK, so we had the OS framework, we had the starter apps, we started to feel pretty good about it, and then we needed more people in the product org to try it. And there were kind of 2 steps to make this possible. The first is you have to become a forward deployed engineer at your own company. So what does that actually mean? It means you need to actually set up time with your teammates, sit with them, and watch them onboard into your product. And that's exactly what we did for PMOS. Initially, people will get stuck on step 1, but over time, we sort of smoothed out the rough edges by keeping a friction log of every problem, every complaint, anything that was confusing, and then stack ranking them and addressing them. And we did this loop in a really fast way. And so we did this over 10 times with our team. Eventually, we ended up with an all-new setup experience, new help documentation, and more. It was at that point that we decided to share with the product team that we were ready for them to try PMOS. So we went from just the working group onboarded to about 25% of the product team set up. This was very exciting. However, we kind of hit a ceiling at this point, and we wondered why. So we spoke to the people who didn't onboard, and we heard the same thing over and over, which is just that they needed dedicated time, dedicated attention to set up. And so even though we made it as simple as possible from our POV, we knew that we weren't going to be able to get people to do this in between their busy day, in between their meetings. And so that led to step 2 of rolling out a new AI native way of working, and that's to hijack an offsite, or really any virtual or physical space where you have your team's attention. Lucky for us, we had a product team offsite, and we became a formal part of the programming. And so we not only wanted to onboard people into PMOS, but we actually wanted to help them learn how to build and extend PMOS so it really felt like their own. And so with that goal, we actually ran a hackathon, and people used PMOS to build on top of PMOS, which was very gratifying and really cool. And by the end of it, dozens of improvements actually shipped, committed to GitHub. People improved the building blocks, they improved existing skills, they added new ones. And there were fun ones too. So one of them was to automatically make a FigJam board when it's someone's work anniversary. Another one could take a spec and turn it into a pitch deck, and there were dozens. It was great. So at that point, we had 100% adoption of the product org. We received lots of positive feedback, which we're really proud of. My favorite one is the one here in blue from Pratik. He was actually out on paternity leave during the development of PMOS, including the offsite. And when he returned, he set up on his own. But more importantly, he actually said that he feels not only caught up, but that he feels like there's this new way of doing work as a PM thanks to this tool.
Awesome. So yeah, at this point, everything was really coming together. If there's any younger Gen Z in the audience, this is a reference to Windows XP. It's an older operating system. It's the one that I grew up on. And we really like the analogy to an operating system as both our namesake as well for PMOS, because there's apps that come with it, there's more that you can install, and you can also be a developer and build your own. And we've sort of seen this developer ecosystem pop up around PMOS within Figma, where people are adding skills, upgrading the existing ones, even changing the look and feel. We've even had some brave people fork the whole thing. Shout out to Prasant, a PM on the editor team, he might be in here, who's been one of our most prolific contributors. And I was talking to PMs as part of preparing for this talk to see how they were using it, if it was part of their day-to-day workflows. And I was really blown away by how much people seem to already trust and rely on this tool. And to give you an example of what that might look like, let's step into the shoes of Elin, one of our growth PMs, and let's say that she needs to make this decision for a new user experience if we're going to show a welcome screen or a template gallery. And so she'll now go to PMOS and just have a conversation with it, like a thought partner. And because PMOS knows our operating manual, or like our internal wiki of how we work, it can suggest that she should do a product review. And it can offer to go and gather some of the context and even scaffold the content for a FigJam board that she can use during this review. And so it'll first go out onto searching Slack using the Scout skill and follow links all on its own, and in this way, kind of get a picture of what opinions are currently in play. Then it notices that there's an ongoing experiment, so it can invoke the experiment review skill, which uses the hex MCP, will pull some real results, and put quantifiable evidence into the picture. And then Elin knows that some of her stakeholders might care about technical trade-offs in particular, so she can ask it to use the Codebase Insights skill, which will use the GitHub connector to look at the actual code base and then help provide an informed opinion on some of the trade-offs pertaining to the implementation architecture. And of course, engineers can and should verify that. Finally, with the help of the FigJam Builder skill, using the Figma MCP, PMOS and Elin combine to design a clearly laid out agenda in FigJam, bringing together all of these considerations, layering in her point of view, and enabling a really productive discussion. And so the best part of this is, Elin didn't have to dig through a whole bunch of Slack channels herself. She didn't have to write any SQL. She barely had to bug the engineers. And she didn't even have to fiddle with the size or the color of sections on a FigJam board. All she needed was to know the decision that she wanted to make, the inputs that stakeholders care about, and how she wanted to frame up the conversation. And then she let PMOS just handle the rest. And in doing so, she probably saved at least 2 hours of her own time. And the prep still culminates in the most important part of product development that AI is not going to replace, which is the side-by-side discussion, the riffing, and the debate between real people, which is how consequential decisions still have to be made. And so when I heard Elin and other PMs describing these workflows to me, I felt like we'd reached this full circle moment from Ezra's manifesto just a few short months ago. And looking back, we've actually unlocked just about all of the tooling that we used to speculate about. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, we think we're still pretty early in terms of unlocking the full potential of the team. But what I hope you take away from this talk isn't that we've actually built anything particularly revolutionary or unique in any way. Because what we did with Figma's PM team with PMOS, you could just as easily do for yours with a PMOS or a design OS or a company OS. Everyone here is figuring out how to work with AI at the same time. And the technology is so nascent that I don't think there's a skill gap or a skill issue at all. Still, I think there are a few key ingredients that were crucial to the success of PMOS at Figma. First, we started with a few passionate individuals. We were given clear sponsorship and a timeline. And this is a situation where these constraints can breed creativity. In larger organizations, sometimes you actually do need permission to run on a big new idea, and that happens to be how we got started.
Yeah, and on top of that, we followed our own rules. We started simple. We built something that we thought would be genuinely useful for ourselves. And we talked to every single user along the way, from a single skill to the full-blown project of PMOS.
And what we landed on was this system that combines your profile, your organization's context, and a thoughtful user experience all in by default. And once we put together these building blocks, it created something that felt greater than the sum of its parts.
And so that's what's up with PMOS. Wherever you are in your journey with implementing AI in your company, whether it's a single skill or a really large, complex project, we'd love to hear what you're up to as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.